I'm afraid I can't hear you now.
Welcome to Living Mosaic, a program of the Spark of Humanity Network. My name is Martha Holden. I'm a member of the Spark of Humanity Network. Living Mosaic is conceived as, well, it starts with the concept that to all the world's ills and problems and pains and horrors, heartbreaks, there is a solution. And we are envisioning it as like a living mosaic in which each one of us has a unique and essential role. So this these programs are conceived as a way of affirming that and helping us all develop the practices and the habits of thought and the understanding which loosen us up so that we may become drawn toward our essential and unique place in the mosaic, our unique role in the dance, if you will. It doesn't need to be a mosaic, but that's the language we use. So the Spark of Humanity Network is based on the understanding that there is a spark of humanity in each one of us. And that when we, through our sparks, connect with and affirm the spark in someone else, that changes things. It strengthens their spark. It also strengthens our spark. Today we're going to be talking about practices Practice with a C, my mommy taught me that practice with a C is a noun. Practice with S is a verb, like practice the piano. A practice is something we do, we develop as a habit. It becomes habituated so that we can sort of find ourselves, as it were, falling into it, returning to it. When we find ourselves uncomfortable and in distress, we have practiced the practice enough, so it's become a habit, and that just our neural pathways have been formed so that we sort of fall into the groove of our practice when we reach a level of distress that inspires us to remember that we have a choice in this. Everyone is entitled to their own practice. This is about the Living Mosaic programs are about that we're each unique as well as being essential. There is no solution without all of us, every one of us, at least cooperating, participating, whether knowingly or not, but hoping that you are willing to, interested in, inclined to put yourself more intentionally in the process of becoming who you uniquely are and essentially are, that you may have your role, your place in the solution, in the overall solution. So we're talking about practice because, at least for me, my experience is, and some of the rest of us, is that when we're sort of going along in our own accustomed diddy-boppy ways, that we can get caught up in these thought trains, the stories we tell ourselves, the habits of thought of, it may be negative, it may be positive. It may be judging others, it may be judging ourselves. It may be comparing ourselves with others, it may be comparing others with others. All those thought processes are like little sandbars or big barricades between us and our availability to the natural drawing of the mosaic. The mosaic, since it's living, we sometimes talk about it as inhaling. The natural movement toward our place in the mosaic. So becoming aware of those, feeling when we're doing it, that in our body it feels, or our soul or our heart, wherever we're feeling, this isn't quite right. It doesn't need to be this way. To remember the times when we felt peace, when we felt comfort, when we felt safe, when we felt at home. And remembering that all those things are words we put on components of being in, or at least toward, our place in the mosaic. So when we have developed our body has developed the memory of feeling safe, feeling at peace, feeling at home, being essentially comfortable. Then when we're someplace else, it can sort of send us a little signal, pay attention, that we don't need to be there. We have a choice, and that's when, perhaps consciously, perhaps not consciously, eventually we can flip over into our practice and just find, oh yeah, that's right. And just being in our practice, which affirms our essential safety, whatever it is. I suppose some people have developed a practice which denies their essential safety, but they're welcome to it. I don't think they're paying any attention to us. So that having a place that we've practiced enough when we're intentionally, consciously deciding that this is what we want, or this is at least what we're willing to try out, or I can't get back to sleep, so what can I do besides sit here and be bored? Or, God forbid, get up and get on the computer and, check our email or our Facebook or whatever we might do in the middle of the night. We can return to our practice. We can practice our practice and let it become habituated, so that in those times when we're realizing, oh, I'm telling myself stories again, I'm recounting the same story that I have told myself over and over and over again as long as I can remember. And you know what? I've come to believe that maybe it's not true. Like that. Or why do I keep going to this old cyclical, I did this, she did that. I did this, she did that, because I did that, then she did this, then, that story over and over again. Or whatever the story is, or the boy, she really, he really, they really, meh, meh, meh. Whatever the story is, whether it's a judgment or a comparison or just some sort of narration, to remember that to create a habit of our practice, to practice our practice enough so that it is habituated somewhere within our neural pathways, and that in the time when we realize that we're telling ourselves the same old story, we can glide into the practice and find ourselves just, oh yeah, this is where I want to be, is in my practice. Now, we at the Spark of Humanity Network offer a practice. We can call it the Spark practice, and I'm going to describe it briefly in a couple minutes. And it doesn't make any difference what your practice is. I mean, as long as it's not, negative or vindictive, as long as it could be recognized as a constructive spiritual practice from any tradition. As we've learned, there are many traditions, many spiritual traditions in this world, and probably beyond this world. And if you explore, if you're willing to explore, willingness, again, we've talked about this before, willingness is a large component here. If you're willing to explore and be open, and you might even ask, as we talked about last time, just ask whatever, I want to find a spiritual practice that works for me. Help me find a spiritual practice. And so we try one out, and we are changing. We're evolving. We're not static. So maybe our spiritual practice changes. Maybe after a while, the one that we find this week and enjoy for several months or years, maybe after a while it just goes flat. And we get to look for another spiritual practice, or let this sort of like shooting off another limb. We go out on that limb of the spiritual practice we've used. So a lot of freedom, immense freedom. There's nothing but freedom in this. With our determination is a very strong word, but I'll use it anyway. You can damp it down if you want. Our desire to find and develop and become at home in and attuned to a spiritual practice that works for us, that we can return to, that we like, that feels real, that I find there's traction in it. And I go, I can get a lot better in this spiritual practice. I do not have it all neatly tied up and all done. There's growth potential, to put it mildly, in my spiritual practice. So finding one that works, and practicing however it is. So just because I'm here and I'm a member of the Spark of Humanity Network, and the Spark of Humanity Network is the sponsor of the Living Mosaic project, I want to run, hopefully simply and briefly, through what I consider to be the Spark practice, which other members of the Spark of Humanity Network may have a different take on it. That's good. That's part of the freedom. But this is sort of my take on it. It starts with our finding our spark of humanity. This can, well, being at peace, maybe sitting in meditation for a few moments before this just to do some breathing. 3 deep breaths in, 3 deep breaths out, I've heard sort of connects us with our vagus nerve that sort of connects all our chakras, and it's a good thing. And just becoming aware of where our spark of humanity is within this information system with which I identify, this unique information system within the ever-evolving multidimensional dance of all being, if we want to use the big language. So finding my spark of humanity, you finding your spark of humanity, and then through that spark, reaching out to connect with and affirm the spark in someone else. The way we do this we do guided meditations on this at great length, basically every other Sunday. It's the Sunday closest to the new moon and closest to the full moon, around noon. If you go on the website, you'll find out when it is. But through our spark of meditation to reach out, spark of humanity, to reach out to and connect with the spark in someone else. And we usually start, this is a gift from Tibetan Buddhism, to start out with somebody who's near to us, who we care about. Then when that feel how that feels, let it be. Go to someone a little more difficult, a situation that may be painful, someone who we really want to help, someone we really don't like, someone we're having problems with, someone we really fear and hate and are terrified by. And so making it increasingly difficult. This is just practicing, loosening up, getting to the point where we feel tired. Depleted is the way I think of it. Our sparks, I believe, are not depleted. They're ongoing, thank heavens. They cannot be corrupted. They cannot be extinguished. They're there. But me, the physical, mental, emotional structure, dance, cluster that is carrying the spark can get pretty depleted. But that part of the spark meditation can be part of the practice. It can be the essence of the practice. And or the other next phase of the spark meditation can be its own practice, which is accessing the resources we need to feel complete, strong enough to do the practice, to continue on. So practicing that is the roots phase of the meditation, because our premise is that as people doing the spark practice, we are agents of transformation. Because when we connect with and affirm the spark in someone else, their spark is strengthened. And that seems to erode their defenses and clarify their bafflement and release their distortions. It also does the same for us, but we'll talk about that later. So it's a subtle, very, very subtle transformation process that we are feeding, that we are encouraging when we connect with and affirm their spark of humanity. So that in that way we are agents of transformation. And as we continue to do that, the transformation becomes more actualized. It may become even visible to us. So to do this, that's our first premise, first reassurance is as we are potential agents of transformation, as agents of transformation, we have access to all the resources we need. This is as agents of transformation, not as agents of militarism or agents of capitalism or agents of neoliberalism or agents of, any other agent. It's as agents of transformation. We have all the resources we need. So we're envisioning those as roots, like we're a tree with roots, and the roots go down and out and they get all the nutrients needed. They break through rocks, they go through silt, they go down through all the strata in which we are planted in the terrain, and they draw in the resources, the nutrients. We send down a taproot, which is like giving us, driving down into the aquifer of living truth that gently sloshes and flows beneath all creation. And we can send a taproot down into that and draw up our access to the living truth. And then the third movement is sending out like rhizomes or the mycorrhizal network in the botanical world to connect with others who are doing the same work, consciously or unconsciously, and connecting with them so we realize we're part of a community. So those are the three movements within the roots part of the three-part spark meditation. So we have community. We realize we're inevitably embedded in a community, that we have access to the living truth, that we have the stability we need and the nutrients we need. And so that we can do just when we're tired. We don't have to start with the spark part where we're connecting with others, but I turn to that whenever I'm tired and exhausted and I can't do this anymore. I go to the roots. Then the third phase is about the willingness. Are we willing to be transformed? Because this work does transform us over time, subtly. We don't notice it. So are we willing to be transformed, and looking at that? And that can be its own practice. So there can be three practices from this meditation series that we offer, or any other. This is who we are, so this is what I'm talking about because this is what we have to offer. Suggest the willingness one I find very helpful when I'm faced with a situation I'm uncomfortable in. I don't know how to handle it. I'm not sure I have the skills to address it gracefully because, of course, I want to be graceful so I can feel good about myself. And I find that the willingness to just like, okay, am I willing? Because any situation that makes me uncomfortable, that comes down the line at me, is, we sometimes say, it's custom crafted to develop and grow me so that I can become more who I'm needed to be in the mosaic, in the living mosaic of the solution. So, okay, am I willing to be transformed by the situation? And, we both know, we all know, that often when something unknown, uncomfortable is coming at me, the tendency is to strengthen the defenses and make up a story, they're to blame or whatever, and it's their problem, whatever. And get gnarled up in this thinking process, or just a panic, or a leaving our bodies, or dissociate, whatever we do. But when something uncomfortable and unknown and whatever comes at us, that's the tendency, I think, or at least it has been for me for most of my life. Defenses, I don't know how to handle. But instead to use that as an opportunity to develop the willingness practice. I'm willing to be transformed. Or am I willing to be transformed? Let me think about how willing I am to be transformed. So when I get in touch, when I flip it over into that, and I'm looking at that as the situation is coming at me, when I'm thinking, oh, I'm willing to be transformed. I am. Somewhere I made that decision, back in the middle of October in 2024. I decided I was willing to be transformed. So that, affirming that, and then, okay, so then to go use the spark practice, use the roots I have the resources to deal with this situation that's confronting me. This is just the spark practice. You can find your own, you can bastardize it all you want, but this is what we have to offer. It's that willingness to be flexible, to be molded, to be formed for our place in the mosaic. Because I know, and maybe you're willing to admit, I know that I don't know what my best role is, what I'm uniquely capable of, what my essential place is. I like to think I'm moving towards it, but I don't know. So one of the things is developing that willingness, and having willingness be a practice. Accessing the resources, so I have the feeling of safety, of stability, of I have the resources I need in order to deal with this situation. And to be remembering that there's a spark of humanity in everyone. So any of those three components, all of them together, are a practice we can offer. And it's not required, it's just we're offering it. It's working for us slowly and uniquely as we're doing this. And hopefully we're looking at maybe next year running a further series about Living Spark with a different host, and how we apply these in the day-to-day life. I'm way too abstract for that, but we have someone, we think, who may be willing to do that, to continue the momentum here in this process. So with great gratitude to Orca Media, to Rowan and Jen and Zach and all those folks here to help bring this show together, and to dear Coleman, who's lingering in illness, and to all the energies and beings of all dimensions who support this enterprise, with much gratitude. And thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us. And let's have a little silence as we become aware of our sparks and our willingness. Thank you again for joining us.